is this unit gonna be fired? Come on! Woo, that's fire!
That is fire.
A lot of wardrobe boxes. I will tell you one thing about this locker. They took pride.
He was once known as the gambler with the Midas touch, but what happened next left fans heartbroken and shocked. Let's explore his story. Imagine the yard before the chant starts. A chain-link horizon, concrete warming under a slow sun, and a row of corrugated doors that look the same until they roll up. People gather, some with poker faces, some with tells they think no one notices. Then you hear him. The laugh arrives first, then the stride. Darrell Sheets, the one everyone called the gambler, scans a doorway and reads it like a weather report. He knows when the air feels right, when a smell hints at decades, when a single object near the front tells a truer story about the back. He made television out of courage and curiosity, and for a while that felt like the whole story. It was not. The tragedy in Darrell's story never needed a tabloid. It lives in a hospital room in 2019, and in the quiet choices that followed, and in the way a life built on momentum had to learn to survive on rhythm. Before we get there, remember what he climbed to. When Storage Wars turned Lion auctions into appointment television, Darrell's role was clear. He was the one who would push when others paused. He believed in educated risk. He believed in gut checks that came from years of opening doors, smelling mildew and motor oil, and still knowing there might be something under that tarpaulin that would pay for 3 months of rent and 2 months of peace. He took losses without flinching and wins without bragging, at least for long. You do not get a nickname like the gambler by playing safe. You get it by understanding that in this trade, safety is an illusion unless you buy right and sell right and accept that the space between those two is your actual job. His highest high is the one even casual fans remember. A unit bought for a few $1,000s that became a private gallery. Inside were hundreds of original works by the Mexican-American artist Frank Gutierrez, sketched life, painted color, and decorated pieces piled like someone had moved an entire creative chapter into storage and lost the key. On air, the valuation hovered near the kind of number that makes a living room whistle. Around $300,000 worth of art was the estimate, pending the hard work of authentication and sale. We watched a man lift canvases with the caution of a person who understood the difference between trash and treasure. We watched him meet the artist afterward and return personal items that did not belong on a shelf. That is a detail that fades in summaries and deserves not to. A windfall tests character. He passed. There were other peaks that felt more like a grin than a gasp. The day a door rolled up and a flood of childhood poured out. Comics stacked from floor to ceiling, carded toys, cases of tiny metal cars, boxes that rattled with joy. You could see the kid in him flicker to the surface, the one who would have mowed lawns all summer for a single playset. On the show, the numbers for that locker moved toward 6 figures. Off the show, what mattered was how he walked through it. He knew that nostalgia only pays when condition and completeness do their part. He understood that the best story about a toy is only half the price. The other half is plastic that survived and cardboard that never bent. The adult in him held the line while the kid got to smile. That is not an easy dance to make look natural. The highlights are lovely. They are not living. Between those episodes were months where the units held the usual mix of promise and disappointment. Housewares that were honest but unspectacular. Tools with stories but not much margin. Furniture too heavy for the price people want to pay. The camera edits those days into a montage. The work edits them into a mortgage and groceries and a chance to keep going. Darrell kept going. That is the piece of him you want to remember before we open the door to the part of the story that hurts. In March 2019, he got sick in a way that shoves everything else to the edges. He suffered a heart attack. In the hospital, the doctors named the rest: congestive heart failure, trouble with the lungs, imaging and labs and language that lands like a gavel. There was surgery, stents to open blocked valves, the kind of vest you wear under your shirt that will fire a shock into your chest if the rhythm fails. The gambler, a nickname built on bravado and math, learned to measure the day in percentages. Weeks later, there was a small mercy he shared, because some news wants to be told even if you are private by nature. Heart function had climbed to around 40%. The vest came off. The relief was real and cautious at once. He did not claim a finish line. He marked a mile marker. If you know nothing about storage auctions, know this: the job is physical even when you make it look like a song. You lift, sort, sweep, stack, roll, haul, and load. You pick a thing up and put it down hundreds of times in a week. A body that once held that routine easily may decide one morning that it would like a different plan. That was his reality after the hospital. He had already lost weight years earlier, a decision he made because the work asked for it. He had already cleaned up habits and rebuilt routines. The heart made another demand anyway. That is the tragedy that feels unfair and therefore very human. You can do many things right and still be asked to change more. When the show returned from its long pause and the world tried to stand up straight again in 2021, Darrell returned too. He appeared in new episodes, laughed on camera, bid in yards where the air tastes like a tin can simmering in sun, and made choices that felt like the older version of him, but with added patience. It looked like confidence on screen. Inside, it was a promise he was keeping to people he loved and to himself. He worked because work is his language. He worked differently because a body that gave him a warning deserved to be listened to. That balancing act is not dramatic on television. It is dramatic in life. There is another thread in this story that makes the sadness sharper because it is ordinary. The work that made him famous also made him a partner to his son, Brandon. Through early seasons, they were a pair, a father and a son learning where to stand together when money and pride and patience share a very small room. It is messy and beautiful to build a business with a family. Then, budgets changed. After season 9, Brandon left the show. He said publicly at the time that he was told it was a budget decision. He built a new life outside the series, moved to Arizona, and pursued a career that was not dependent on a camera. A family split lanes the way families do when the world rearranges itself. Pride walks alongside the ache of doing familiar work without the person you once did it with. Darrell kept going as a solo act on air, and as a man who still had to pay bills when the lights went off.
How much some of this stuff is worth you've gotten over the years.
Can you believe it? 14 years. But you know one thing I want to tell you guys. Havasu's the man cave capital of the world, man. This is where I got all this stuff. I bought everything in this town in the last 5 years.
He opened a new storefront in Lake Havasu, Arizona, called Show Me Your Junk. The name felt like a wink and a welcome at once. The kind of phrase a buyer says when a truck backs up and you are not afraid of what you might find. He turned decades of instinct into a walk-in lane for people who needed to convert clutter into cash. He stepped into that role because it used the same muscles he had always used, but it allowed him to write the schedule in a way his heart could live with. That is not defeat. That is wisdom earned at a cost. The internet does not see wisdom easily. It sees dramatic nouns. It sees rumors fly faster than corrections. More than once, false reports of his death moved around social media. Think about the cruelty of reading your own obituary and then deciding whether to spend energy on correcting it. He did the only thing that works when noise tries to swallow a person. He posted. He showed up. He made the next small joke that pointed at the next small job. He was never interested in feeding gossip, because the best antidote to gossip is room tone and a long day of work. The show's fans often ask for numbers like they are a secret code that will unlock the whole tale. How much did the art sell for? How much did the toy locker net after fees? What rate did the series pay per episode? The real code is simpler and more useful. He tried to convert flashes of luck into long streams of income. He used big scores to buy time and business leverage, not just headlines. He kept his eye on turnover and space, so inventory did not become a burden. He did the blue-collar math on a white-collar stage. That is why he is still in the trade. You cannot build a life on a windfall alone. You can build one on systems that turn hundreds of small choices into a surplus most months. We do not have to pretend his life outside business was a straight line either. He divorced in the middle of those years, loved again, handled the awkwardness of being known while going through very human chapters, and did his best to be gracious when fans treated those chapters like plot points. He thanked people who stood next to him in hospitals. He posted birthday wishes to people who mattered, and he moved forward in a way that felt honest. If you have lived long enough, you know that relationships do not always end at the same pace on paper and in the heart. He carried that complexity and kept working. What does tragedy look like in a story like this? It is not a fall from an imagined mansion. It is a man in a gown staring at a ceiling tile in the quiet hour before a nurse checks vitals again. It is a row of pill bottles that say time in a different language. It is an auction yard where his eyes do an extra calculation before his feet take a step. It is a vest under a shirt, reminding him that all the bravado in the world is a poor substitute for blood that moves the way it should. In the afternoon, he looked around a yard and decided to leave a few fights to other people, because he wanted to be able to come back tomorrow. If this sounds like a softer man, it is because softness is not the opposite of strength. It is what strength looks like when it grows up. He still smiles the same when a unit feels right. He still bristles when a seller's story does not match the evidence. He still has a feel for how many hours a piece is going to cost him after the handshake. He is still Darrell. The tragedy is that he had to learn this in public while carrying a nickname that people expect to mean one thing forever. The miracle is that he learned it without letting bitterness bleed into the work. Think about how grief works when it is not about death. It is about the self you were before the body intervened. It is about the pace you once loved and the speed limit you now respect. It is about the son who moved on and the way a room feels bigger when the person who used to stand next to you is in another state. He grieved those things the way men like him grieve. He worked, he adjusted, he took the next reasonable chance and the next reasonable rest. He bought a shop where his name is on the door and where a person can come in with a trunk of whatever and leave with rent and a breath that is easier to take. There are small scenes that say more than any headline. The day a unit was a bust, and he laughed anyway because the gamble was honest and the odds were not terrible. The moment he returned a personal box to an artist he had never met and felt how heavy gratitude can be in your hands. The time he passed on a unit, a younger version of him would have chased because the back of his neck said, "You already did your damage for the day." The message he posted said that the heart number had improved, and the vest could go in a closet. The first time he stood in front of his Havasu shop and turned the key and looked at a room full of possibility and junk, which is one of the most hopeful combinations in the world. You can call all of this sad. You would be right, but you would be missing the point if that is where you stop. The sadness here has dignity. It sits with the reality that bodies change and families detach, and rumors do not deserve your oxygen. It accepts that a life on television is still a life. The better word might be tender. There is a tenderness in the way he looks at a unit now, in the way he lets other people win some days, in the way he talks about luck, like a friend who moved away but still sends postcards. If you are making a video about a person's tragedy, You owe the person this much. Tell the part about the hospital with the same care you tell the part about the art. Tell the part about a father's pride and a father's absence with the same respect you give to the day a door rolled up to reveal 3 decades of toys. Tell the part about jokes on camera with the same gentle tone you use for the day a vest went in a drawer. The tragedy of Darrell Sheets is incredibly sad because it is normal, and because it happened to a man who made a living from staring at rooms full of other people's normal and turning them back into hope. Stand with him in an empty unit at the end of a long day. Dust hangs like slow confetti. The broom has pushed leaves against a far wall. He rests his hands on his hips and breathes the way people breathe when they know they deserve to be tired. He looks like a person famous for the coolest parts of his job, who managed to keep the job and the person intact after a season that tried to take both. Tomorrow, there will be a different door and a different bet. He will choose with care. He will smile if he is right. He will laugh if he is wrong. He will go home to a body that he listens to now, to a shop that carries his humor in its name, to a life that did not collapse when the worst day arrived. The hospital is never quiet the way television is quiet. It hums, shoes slide, plastic rustles, monitors chirp with the authority of metronomes. In that soundscape, a man who made a life from reading rooms had to learn to read his own body. Recovery was not a montage. It was mornings of pills and afternoons of walking to the door and back. It was the doctor's voice reciting numbers that used to mean statistics and now meant choices. It was the moment a nurse handed him a vest that would watch his heart for him and step in if it stumbled. It was the day they told him he could stop wearing it, and the breath he took felt like a little more of himself coming home. He did not pretend the chapter never happened. He just refused to let it narrate the rest. When he stepped back into the yard, the work he loved met the man he had become. He still felt for the air that means a unit has been sealed for years. He still tracked dust layers with his eyes the way a tracker reads trails. He still noticed details in a single glance that most people miss. A mid-century lamp buried in the back. A moving blanket with a shape you cannot fake. Boxes whose tape color tells you how long they have been sitting. But now there was another meter running, the one inside his chest. He let it be a partner. That is the difference between a gambler and a fool. The fool takes the bet to prove they are the same as yesterday. The gambler takes the bet because the outcome improves tomorrow. Most people think the bid is the skill. The skill is what happens after. Storage success is a pipeline. He built his over decades piece by piece, and post-hospital he refined it again. Call your buyer before you lift the thing they want. Photograph, text, commitment, then carry. Offload fast and move cash forward. The grind of that rhythm is not glamorous, which is why it works. He could still gamble on a locker that sings. He just stopped gambling on time. When the body demanded a slower loadout or a shorter day, he gave it. He wanted more days, not just louder ones. People love the Art Locker story because it has plot. A man opens a door to find not clutter, but a career's worth of work by Frank Gutierrez. That day turned a modest bid into a number that bends the show's curve. What gets missed is the ethic inside the myth. He went to the artist, put personal items back into the hands they belonged to, and treated the windfall like work, not like legend. That ethic survived the hospital. It may have grown there. If you handle good luck with reverence, life is more willing to hand you another round. You can measure how someone is doing by how they handle the days that are not worth filming. The post-hospital days were exactly that. A unit full of perfectly normal furniture that would find homes through classifieds and regulars who always needed a dresser for a rental or a couch for a nephew. Boxes of kitchenware that would sell quickly if the price respected reality. a skid of parts only 2 customers in his phone cared about. He bought, placed, and moved on. He went to Arizona and opened a storefront with a name that sounds like a joke and functions like a welcome. Show me your junk is an invitation and a business model. Bring what you have. Let me do the math. Let us make space in your life and margin in mine. In that shop, you can watch the soft power that kept him in this trade. He talks to people who are letting go. Some need to sell. Some need to breathe. Some bring a carload without knowing what any of it is worth. He never confuses any of those reasons with weakness. His kindness is practical. It reduces friction and increases speed. He buys, clears, and pays. He does not break people down to shave a dollar. He does the opposite. He builds them up, they leave lighter, and he still does fine. The best buyers are translators. He translates clutter into cash, keeps the dignity intact, and keeps going. You cannot tell his story without the chapter where father and son stopped sharing a counter. The show shifted budgets after a long run. Brandon moved on after season 9, moved to Arizona, and chose a lane where the paycheck did not depend on weekly edits. Leaving a public partnership is like lifting a heavy box with only one handle. You can do it, but it calls on different muscles. The pride survived the shift. The ache did too. In 2024, when his son survived a serious car accident and recovered, that pride turned into gratitude. Family arcs are long. The show taught viewers to love short arcs. The heart has never cared about episode structure. While he adapted, the rumor mill did what rumor mills do. A quiet season without many appearances turned into false obituaries passed around by strangers who seem to think clicks can stand in for respect. He dealt with that indignity by living. He posted small updates and moved about his day. He stood in front of his shop and squinted into sun. He lifted a box, then asked someone younger to lift the next one, because learning to ask is part of the new rules. Presence is the best correction in a loud room. It does not scream, it insists. He also kept bumping into the past in the best way. Fans who grew up watching him walk units with his son now visit with kids of their own. They hold out phones, and he leans into the frame with a grin that has not learned how to fake it. They tell him about watching him with their dads. Some have dads who are gone now. Those moments fold a lot of feelings together. Grief, gratitude, the relief of a stranger who feels familiar and has not made a fool of himself with fame. He handles those scenes the way he handles a goodbye, with patience, with a joke to release the pressure, with the understanding that this is work too. If you want to understand why he has lasted, learn to watch the way he watches. He sets a risk budget before the auctioneer clears his throat. He decides how many times he will let emotion argue with sense, and then he holds his own line. He looks for staging tells, a furniture blanket pattern that appears too often near the front, a way to make an honest unit look like a miracle. He knows the smell of optimism and the smell of damp cardboard. He reads the edges of boxes for stains that make old electronics into new trash. He notices when heavy things sit on delicate things in a way that tells him the person who packed did not know or did not care. That is the difference between a unit you can turn and a unit that will eat hours and anger. It feels odd to admit, but there is a kind of gentle tragedy in watching a person lose speed and gain wisdom. He once ran at work. He now walks and arrives just the same. He once lifted to prove he could. He now points and lets a younger back earn its keep. He once forced a joke through a moment because he thought a camera wanted it. He now lets silence play. The sad part is that we only learn these lessons when the body insists. The good part is that if we listen, we get to keep going long enough to use them. Television rewarded the big finds and turned the mundane into montage. He has always known that the mundane is where your life lives. Buy a unit of basics and place it fast. Take a smaller margin that moves a store full of items rather than two that take a month to find a home. Outsource repairs that used to keep you up at night because a younger person needs the work and you need the rest. Use the name the show gave you to get better appointments with sellers and better terms with distributors. Then turn that advantage into a good day, not a personality you have to carry like armor. He wears the name The Gambler, now the way a craftsman wears an old apron. It has marks that tell a story. It also keeps him honest. There is another grief in this story that fans do not always notice. It is the grief for the version of the job that existed before storage auctions became theater. When the cameras arrived, crowds followed. Prices rose in filmed caravans because people bid with hope more than with math. Veterans like him found other routes, earlier hours, less public sales. They adapted. Adapting gets harder when your heart edits the calendar. He learned to pick his spots. That is sad only if you believe life owes you the same room forever. He stopped believing that in a hospital bed. He still talks about value with the kind of clarity most people reserve for religion. Value lives at the intersection of story and condition. A story can add 10% when it is true and subtract 100% when it is not. Condition is the law. A scuff is a scuff even if the seller swears a celebrity once looked at the item. He has written thousands of stories. He has never forgiven bad condition. That ethic has always protected him from the worst outcomes. After 2019, it protected him from something else too. The urge to make a deal for the sake of feeling like the old days. He let the numbers tell him who he was, not the nostalgia. What happened in Lake Havasu matters because it is the template anyone who loves a hard job can learn from. He did not leave the trade. He changed its unit of measure. Instead of chasing the seasonal rhythm of a show that can only spotlight some of what you do, he built a counter where he could see the whole day. People walk in. He buys. He sells. He clears houses and storage units for estates and folks who need to downsize. He takes trucks to scrap yards and bins to charities and keeps all of that movement inside a schedule that does not pull the rug out from under his sleep or his medication or his family. He turned the same instincts into a smaller radius with the same purpose. Make space for people. Make a margin for yourself. Repeat. You can hear the way his language changed if you listen to it. He says, "I already did enough today," when earlier versions would have added one more stop. He says, "I do not need it," when earlier versions would have wanted to prove something. He says, "Call so-and-so and let them have it," when earlier versions would have tried to be every link in the chain. That is not quitting. That is staying. There is a particular kind of victory that belongs to people who kept their humor after hospitals. The body takes your privacy and your vanity and asks you to trade them for more mornings. If you make the trade, you see the world differently. The fun is quieter and more durable. He still laughs in the yard. He laughs in a shop when a kid finds something strange and falls in love. He laughs when a seller's price is wild and then says, "Tell me what you need, not what you want." He laughs in the face of a rumor he did not earn, not because he finds it funny, but because he refuses to let it rewrite the page he is on. The tragedy of Darrell Sheets is incredibly sad because it contains losses you cannot reverse. He lost the version of his health that made him feel invincible for the length of a bid. He lost a routine with his son that belonged to a certain time and never fit again quite the same. He lost the ability to say yes to every road, every early morning, every dare. He did not lose his job. He did not lose his joy. He did not lose his eye. He did not lose his name. Sometimes tragedy leaves the most important pieces. He gathered them. We rarely talk about the spiritual skill of learning to live at a new speed. In the auction yard, Speed is half the thrill. In life, speed is something you can burn up by mistake. He learned restraint without resentment. He learned how to shrink the map and increase the meaning. He learned that when you hand an artist a piece of their past, the room gets quiet in a way that feels like church. He learned that a shop with a playful name can be a sanctuary for people who are ready to let go. He learned that work can teach you how to be a patient, and being a patient can teach you how to work better. There is a last image worth leaving in your mind. It is late afternoon. A unit is swept. The lock hangs open. He stands in the rectangle of light with a posture that suggests a day that counts. He takes a breath that feels measured and full. He checks a message from his son. He smiles. He calls a buyer and says a number that works. He looks at the next row of doors the way a man looks at a river he still loves. He does not have to prove anything to it. He has only to decide whether to step in. He will when the water and the day and the number agree. That is what a seasoned gambler looks like when he learns the odds that matter. For everyone who tuned in hoping for a spectacular collapse, you got something harder to market and easier to live with. You got a man who weathered a health crisis, refused to let rumors write about him, adapted his work to his body, found pride in his son's separate life, and kept making rooms lighter by clearing them. That is tragedy turned into wisdom. It is also television's least favorite ending and life's favorite one. He is still here. He is still buying. He is still learning. He is still laughing. He is still careful with the parts of a story that belong to someone else. If you ever stand in front of him with something to sell and a knot in your chest because of what it meant to someone, he will do what he has always done when he is at his best. He will listen. He will look. He will ask one question that makes you tell the most useful truth. He will make you an offer that respects math and your day. And when you leave, you will feel less burden and more air. That feeling is the opposite of tragedy. It is why he survived one. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with others who remember Darrell's incredible run.